I've seen this too many times to ignore it. Someone gets a notification on their phone. The bank tells them that, for being a valued customer, they've increased the limit on their credit card. And that person smiles. They feel recognized, important, as if they'd passed a test they didn't know they were taking. And every time I hear that story, feel the same weight in my chest. Because I know what comes next. If at some point your card limit has been raised and you experienced it as good news, stay. What I'm going to tell you today can change how you see that piece of plastic forever. And if you leave now, you'll keep believing the bank is on your side. I believed that too, once. I've spent a long time accompanying people in their financial decisions. I've sat with people who earned well, who had steady jobs, organized families, apparently orderly lives. And yet they came to me with a debt they didn't quite know how had grown so large. When I started asking questions, the pattern was almost always the same. Credit card, high limit, minimum payments, and an initial feeling that everything was under control. The problem with credit isn't that it exists. The problem is how it's presented to us. We're taught to use it, but not to understand it. We're told it's a tool, but no one explains who designed that tool or what for. And that, over time, has an enormous cost. Not only financial. Let me tell you the story of Marcos. Fictional name, real situation. Marcos had a steady job, paid his bills on time, and used his card with what he called his head. He never bought things he didn't need, or so he thought. One day, the bank raised his limit from 2,000 to 5,000 euros. Marcos didn't ask for it. It simply arrived. And he thought, good, just in case. That just in case didn't last long. First, it was an unexpected expense, then a vacation he deserved, then some purchase he'd been putting off, always with the intention of paying it off the following month, always with the feeling that he had it under control because he was still below the limit. In 18 months, Marcos owed 4,300 euros. He hadn't bought anything extraordinary. He hadn't had any outlandish luxury. He had lived normally. But that expanded limit had worked like an open door in his mind. And without realizing it, he had walked through that door many times. The belief that causes the most damage here is simple: that having a high limit is a sign of financial solidity. People interpret it as recognition, as if the bank were saying, "We trust you because you're responsible." And that interpretation is completely understandable. We've been raised to value the trust of institutions. But there's something no one tells you out loud. The bank doesn't raise your limit because it trusts you. It raises it because it has calculated that you can take on more debt without stopping payments. Those are two very different things. One thing is that you can carry more weight. Quite another is that it's good for you to carry it. Let me explain how this works on the inside, without technical jargon. When the bank raises your limit, it doesn't do so out of generosity. It does so because it has very precise mathematical models that analyze your behavior. They know how much you spend, when you pay, how you react to available credit. And what those models look for is a very specific profile. Someone who uses credit on a recurring basis, who pays enough to avoid defaulting, but not so much as to pay off the debt all at once. That profile is the most profitable for them. The high limit isn't a ceiling that protects you. It's a space that invites you to occupy it. Furthermore, there's something psychologists have been documenting for years. When we perceive that we have more available, our perception of spending changes. What previously seemed too much starts to seem manageable. Not because our situation has improved, but because the reference number has changed. The bank knows this. That's why it does it. The damage isn't always immediate. That's what makes it so dangerous. In the short term, everything seems manageable. You pay the minimum, you get on with your life. The card keeps working. But the interest on a credit card in Spain typically ranges between 18 and 26% annually. That means a debt of 3,000 euros, paying only the monthly minimum, can take you more than 10 years to pay off and cost you double what you spent. 10 years paying for something you bought a decade ago. Sometimes you can't even remember what it was. But the most invisible cost isn't financial. It's the permanent tension. The feeling that money isn't enough, even though you're earning the same as before. The stress at the end of the month. The difficulty saving because there's always something outstanding. That deteriorates decisions, relationships, and well-being in ways that don't appear in any bank statement. I've seen how that spiral transforms capable, organized people into people who simply survive month to month. Not through lack of intelligence, through lack of information. I want you to take something clear away from this video. Your card limit is not a reflection of your financial worth. It's not a gift. It's not a sign that things are going well. It's a commercial decision made by an institution whose interests are very different from yours. That doesn't mean credit is the enemy. It means you have to look at it with open eyes. The next time a notification arrives telling you your limit has been extended, before you smile, ask yourself one single question. Does this benefit me, or does it benefit the bank? Because for too long, we haven't been taught to ask that question. And it's time to start.